would make a grieving Apache chief stop in his tracks, lower his weapon, and question everything he thought about outsiders? When he stumbles upon a mysterious white woman tending to a dying boy, a shocking truth is revealed, one that could change not only his son's fate but his own heart forever. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Arizona sun blazed mercilessly over the rugged terrain of the Apache territory in 1876, casting long shadows across the red earth and scattered mesquite trees. Chief Apache stood at the edge of his village, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with the practiced vigilance of a leader who had protected his people through countless hardships. At 32 years old, he was a formidable presence, tall and powerfully built, with broad shoulders that spoke of strength earned through years of hunting, fighting, and defending his tribe. His long black hair, adorned with eagle feathers that signified his status, moved gently in the hot breeze. His chiseled features were set in an expression of constant alertness, though lately a deeper worry had etched itself into the lines around his eyes. His son, Kale, was dying. The boy, only 7 years old, had fallen ill 3 weeks ago with a fever that refused to break. The tribal healers had tried everything within their knowledge, every herb, every prayer, every sacred ritual passed down through generations, but nothing worked. Kale grew weaker each day, his small body trembling with chills even under the blazing sun, his breathing shallow and labored. Apache felt a helplessness he had never known in battle, a pain more acute than any wound he had ever received. He was a chief, a warrior, a protector, yet he could not protect his own son from this invisible enemy that consumed him from within. The loss of his wife Lamasi during childbirth 5 years ago had already carved a permanent wound in his heart. She had died bringing their second child into the world, a daughter who survived only 2 days before joining her mother in the spirit world. Since then, Apache had devoted himself entirely to Kale and to his people, burying his grief in duty and responsibility. The thought of losing his son, his only remaining family, was unbearable. It would mean the end of his bloodline, the extinction of the legacy he hoped to pass on. The Apache village consisted of several dozen wickiups, traditional dome-shaped dwellings made of wooden frames covered with brush and hide. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and the sounds of daily life, children playing, women preparing meals, men crafting weapons and tools, filled the air. But there was an undercurrent of tension. Everyone knew about Kale's illness. Everyone feared what it might mean, not just for their chief, but for the tribe itself. A leader consumed by grief could not lead effectively, and these were dangerous times. White settlers continued to push westward, encroaching on Apache land with increasing boldness. The United States Army maintained a strong presence in the region, and skirmishes between soldiers and various Apache bands were common. Apache had managed to keep his people relatively safe by choosing his battles carefully, by knowing when to fight and when to retreat into the mountains. But this delicate balance required his full attention and clear judgment, things that were increasingly difficult to maintain as he watched his son fade away. That afternoon, as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, Apache sat beside Kale in their wickiup, gently placing a cool cloth on the boy's burning forehead. Kale's eyes were closed, his breathing ragged. His small hands clutched at the buffalo hide blanket, and occasionally he would murmur words in delirium, calling for his mother, speaking of visions that made no sense. "Father," Kale whispered, his voice barely audible. "I am cold." Apache's jaw tightened. He added another blanket, though he knew it would make no difference. The cold Kale felt came from within, from the illness that was stealing his life force. "Rest, my son," Apache said softly, his deep voice gentle in a way reserved only for this child. "Conserve your strength. Will Mother come for me soon?" Kale asked, his fevered eyes opening slightly. The question pierced Apache's heart like an arrow. "No," he said firmly, though his voice wavered. "You will get better. You will grow strong and become a great warrior." But even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at him. He had seen too much death, knew too well the signs. Unless something changed, Kale would not see another full moon. As darkness fell, Apache finally emerged from the wickiup, needing air, needing to clear his mind. Several of his warriors approached, their faces grave. Nidus, his most trusted friend and second in command, spoke first. Ashki, we must speak of the soldier patrol spotted near the eastern boundary. They are moving closer to our hunting grounds. Ashki nodded, forcing himself to focus on the matter at hand. How many? 20 men, well armed. They have set up a temporary camp near the river. We will watch them, Ashki decided. If they cross into our sacred lands, we will drive them back. But we do not attack first. Not now. We cannot afford a full conflict with the army. Nidus hesitated, then asked quietly, How is Kale? Ashki's shoulders sagged slightly, the only outward sign of his inner turmoil. The same. Worse, perhaps. I do not know how much longer he can fight. The spirits will protect him, Nidus offered, though his tone suggested even he did not fully believe it. The spirits have taken everything else from me, Ashki said bitterly, then immediately regretted the words. A chief should not show weakness, should not question the ways of the spirit world. But grief was making him careless. That night, Ashki barely slept, listening to his son's labored breathing, feeling more helpless than he had ever felt in his life. When dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he made a decision. He would leave the village for a few hours to hunt, to clear his mind, to ask the spirits for guidance in the quiet of the wilderness. Nidus would watch over Kile in his absence. He took his bow, a quiver of arrows, and his hunting knife, then mounted his horse, a powerful paint stallion he had trained from birth. As he rode away from the village, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but also a desperate need for solitude, for space to think and to grieve without the eyes of his people upon him. He rode for nearly 2 hours, letting instinct and habit guide him through the familiar landscape of mesas and canyons. The morning air was still relatively cool, though it would soon turn scorching. He followed the tracks of a deer, his mind partially on the hunt, partially on his dying son, when he noticed something unusual. Smoke. Not the smoke of a campfire, but the acrid smell of burning wood from a structure. His instincts immediately sharpened. He urged his horse forward cautiously, approaching the source of the smoke. What he found made him pull his horse to an abrupt stop. A small homestead, isolated and vulnerable, was partially burned. The main cabin was damaged but still standing, smoke rising from what remained of a collapsed barn. Bodies of 2 men lay in the dirt, clearly dead for several hours. Raiders, perhaps, or outlaws. The scene spoke of violence and chaos. Ashki's first instinct was to leave. This was white man's trouble, and he had enough of his own. But something made him pause. Movement near the cabin. He notched an arrow, ready for anything, and moved closer on foot, leaving his horse hidden behind a cluster of rocks. Then he saw her. A white woman, young, perhaps 25 years old, with long auburn hair that caught the sunlight like copper. She was alive, seemingly unharmed, and she was doing something that made Ashki freeze in complete shock. She was entering his village. No, that wasn't possible. He was miles from his village. But as he watched, hidden and confused, he realized what he was actually seeing. She was carrying something, moving with purpose toward the damaged cabin, and in her arms was a child. Not just any child. His mind struggled to make sense of what his eyes were showing him. No, he had to be seeing things wrong. The heat, the stress, the lack of sleep, it was making him see things that were not there. He blinked, refocused, and looked again. The woman was real. The cabin was real. But something about the situation felt wrong, felt strange, as if the spirits themselves were guiding him to this place at this exact moment. He lowered his bow slightly but remained hidden, watching, trying to understand what he was witnessing and why every instinct in his body was telling him that this moment would change everything. Ashki remained motionless behind the rocks, his warrior instincts warring with his confusion. He watched the woman carefully, studying her movements, trying to understand what she was doing at this destroyed homestead. She moved with purpose despite the devastation around her, and he noticed she kept glancing nervously at the surrounding landscape, clearly aware of the danger she was in. Then he saw it clearly. She was gathering plants, not randomly, but with deliberate selection, choosing specific herbs and roots from a small garden behind the cabin that had somehow survived the attack. She placed them carefully in a cloth satchel, then filled a canteen from a well. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, and Ashki recognized some of the plants she collected. They were medicinal herbs, the same ones the white doctors sometimes used. His curiosity deepened. Why would a woman remain at a destroyed homestead with dead bodies nearby to gather herbs? She should be fleeing, seeking safety at the nearest town or fort, unless she had nowhere to go, or unless she had a reason to stay that was more important than her own safety. Ashki was about to reveal himself, to demand answers, when the woman suddenly turned and walked directly toward a cluster of large rocks on the opposite side of the clearing. She disappeared behind them, and Ashki heard her voice, soft and gentle, speaking words he could not make out from this distance. Moving silently, as only an Apache warrior could, Ashki circled around to get a better vantage point. What he saw next stopped his heart. Behind the rocks, hidden from casual view, was a small makeshift shelter, barely more than a canvas tarp stretched between boulders, and beneath it, lying on blankets, was a child, a boy. Not a white child, but an Apache boy. And even from this distance, Ashki could see the telltale signs of fever, the same illness that was killing his own son. The woman knelt beside the sick child, speaking softly to him in broken, heavily accented Apache. "Drink," she said gently, holding a cup to the boy's lips. "This will help. I promise." Ashki's mind raced. How did this white woman have an Apache child? Had she stolen him? Was she holding him captive? But nothing about her behavior suggested malice. She tended to the boy with genuine care, gently placing a cool cloth on his forehead, adjusting his blankets, murmuring soothing words. The boy drank weakly from the cup, then lay back, his breathing labored. Ashki recognized that breathing, had listened to it every night for weeks in his own son. This child was gravely ill, perhaps as close to death as Kayla. The woman reached into her satchel and began crushing the herbs she had just gathered, mixing them with water to create a paste. As she worked, she spoke to the unconscious child, her voice thick with emotion. "I could not save them, little one," she whispered. "I could not save your mother or my husband, but I will not lose you too, I swear it. You will live. You must live." Ashki felt his chest tighten. The pieces began to fall into place. The dead men at the homestead, one of them likely her husband. The Apache child, probably the son of a woman who had died here as well. Some kind of tragedy had brought them together, and now this white woman was fighting desperately to save an Apache child's life. He stepped out from his hiding place, his bow lowered but still in hand. The woman heard the sound of his footstep and spun around, her eyes widening in terror. She positioned herself between Ashki and the sick child, her body trembling but her stance protective. "Please," she said in English, then switched to her broken Apache. "Please, not hurt. Boy sick, need help." Ashki studied her face, seeing fear but also fierce determination. She was terrified of him, as she should be, finding herself alone with an Apache warrior. But she did not run. She stood her ground, protecting a child who was not even her own blood. "Who are you?" Ashki asked in clear English, which made the woman's eyes widen further in surprise. "Sarah," she answered, her voice shaking. "Sarah Mitchell. This is Matto. His mother. She came to our homestead 3 days ago, wounded, carrying him. She had been shot by raiders, the same ones who then attacked us. My husband John and his brother tried to defend us, but they were killed. Matto's mother died from her wounds that same night. Before she died, she begged me to save her son. I promised her I would." Ashki looked past her to the child, seeing the resemblance to families in his own tribe. "He is Apache." "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "His mother said his name was Matto, that he was 7 summers old. She said he had been sick even before the raiders attacked their camp. She was trying to reach the army fort, hoping the doctor there might help when they found her." "The army fort?" Ashki's voice hardened. "She was taking an Apache child to the soldiers?" "She was desperate," Sarah said quickly. "She said her husband had been killed 2 weeks ago in a skirmish, that her people were scattered, and that the boy was dying. She would have done anything to save him, as would any mother." The words struck deep. Ashki understood that desperation all too well. He looked at the sick boy again, noting the similarities in his condition to Kaylee's. "What herbs are you using?" he asked, his tone less hostile. Sarah seemed to sense the shift and relaxed slightly, though she remained wary. "Willow bark for the fever, yarrow for infection, and wild mint for his breathing. My father was a physician back in Boston. He taught me before he died. I have been mixing different combinations trying to find something that works, but nothing has helped enough. He grows weaker every day." Ashki stepped closer and Sarah tensed but did not move away. He knelt beside the boy, placing his hand on Matto's forehead. The fever was intense, identical to Kayla's. An idea began to form in his mind, dangerous and unprecedented, but possibly the only hope for both children. "My son has the same sickness," Ashki said quietly, his eyes meeting Sarah's. "For 3 weeks he has been dying. Our healers have tried everything we know. Nothing works." Sarah's expression shifted from fear to something else, understanding perhaps, or shared grief. "I am so sorry," she said softly. "How old is your son?" 7 summers. "The same as this boy." They looked at each other, two parents from completely different worlds, united by the same desperate love for their children, the same helpless terror of watching them slip away. "What if we work together?" Sarah suggested hesitantly. "Your healer's knowledge combined with what my father taught me. Different approaches, different medicines. Maybe together we could find something that works." It was unthinkable. Bringing a white woman to his village would create outrage among his people. The risk was enormous. But Ashki thought of Kaylee's labored breathing, of his small body growing weaker each day, and he knew he would do anything, risk anything, for even a chance to save his son. "This would be dangerous for you," Ashki warned. "My people have no love for whites. Many have lost family to settler attacks, to army raids. They would not welcome you." "I understand danger," Sarah said, glancing at the bodies near the cabin. "I have nowhere else to go anyway. The raiders could return. Other dangers exist out here for a woman alone. If there is a chance to save Matto, to save your son, I will take any risk necessary." Ashki made his decision. "Gather what you need, we leave now. The boy will ride with me. You will follow on your horse if you have one." "I have a mare in what remains of the barn," Sarah said. "Give me 5 minutes." She moved quickly, efficiently, gathering her medical supplies, her father's old physician bag, extra blankets, and what little food remained. Ashki carefully lifted Matto, the boy barely conscious, burning with fever. He was so light, so fragile, just like Kayle. Sarah emerged with her horse, a sturdy chestnut mare that had somehow survived the attack. She had changed into riding clothes and carried saddlebags packed with supplies. Her face was set with determination, though Ashki could see the fear still present in her green eyes. "Stay close to me," Ashki instructed as he mounted his stallion, holding Matto securely. "Do not speak unless I tell you to. Do not make eye contact with the warriors. Show respect but not weakness. My people respect strength." Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of what they were about to do. They rode for nearly 2 hours, the journey made slower by the need to keep the sick child stable. Sarah proved to be an excellent rider, keeping pace without complaint despite the rough terrain. Ashki found himself impressed by her composure. She did not cry, did not complain, did not ask questions. She simply did what needed to be done. As they approached the village, Ashki could see the lookout spotting them, see the alarm spreading as warriors recognized their chief returning with a white woman. By the time they entered the village center, a crowd had gathered, faces ranging from shocked to angry. Nitis pushed through the crowd, his expression stunned. "Ashki, what is this? Why do you bring a white woman here?" "She is a healer," Ashki announced loudly, his voice carrying authority. "She has knowledge our healers do not possess. She may be able to save my son. She will be under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ashki dismounted, still holding Matto, and gestured for Sarah to follow him. She did so, keeping her eyes downcast as he had instructed, but her posture remained straight and dignified. They entered Ashki's wickiup, where Kayle lay exactly as he had left him, perhaps even weaker. An elderly woman, the tribe's primary healer, sat beside the boy. Her name was Adsila, and her face registered shock when she saw Sarah. "Chief, you bring a white woman to tend your son?" Adsila's voice carried disapproval and disbelief. I bring someone who may save him, Ashki corrected firmly. He laid Matto gently on a blanket beside Kele. This boy has the same illness. She has been caring for him. Show her what treatments you have tried. Work together. Find an answer before both these children die. The tension inside the wiki-up was palpable as Adsila and Sarah faced each other across the two dying children. The elderly healer's weathered face showed deep skepticism, her dark eyes studying the white woman with unconcealed distrust. Sarah, to her credit, met the woman's gaze with respect but without cowering, understanding that weakness would gain her nothing here. Ashki stood between them, his powerful presence commanding attention. Adsila, I know this is difficult to accept, but look at my son. Look at Matto. They are dying. Whatever we have tried has failed. We must try something new, or we will lose them both. Adsila's expression softened slightly as she looked at Kele, the child she had helped bring into the world, the child she had watched grow from infant to boy. The pain of failing to save him was written across her face. Finally, she nodded reluctantly. What do you know of this sickness, white woman? Adsila asked in Apache. Sarah looked to Ashki for translation. He repeated the question in English, and Sarah opened her father's medical bag, removing several dried herbs and a small leather-bound journal. My father studied many illnesses, Sarah began, Ashki translating her words. This fever, with the difficulty breathing and the chills, he encountered it during an outbreak in Boston 12 years ago. Many children died, but some survived. The ones who survived were treated with a combination of herbs to reduce fever, yes, but also with steam to help them breathe, and with a constant effort to keep them drinking water and broth to prevent their bodies from drying out completely. Adsila listened intently, her expression thoughtful. We have used steam. We have used herbs for fever. We have made him drink. But perhaps not all at the same time, in the right combinations with enough frequency, Sarah suggested carefully. My father's journal describes treating children every 2 hours, day and night, never letting the fever rise too high, never letting them become too dry. It required constant attention, but it worked for some. She opened the journal, showing pages filled with her father's neat handwriting, detailed notes about treatments, dosages, and outcomes. Adsila could not read English, but she recognized the careful documentation of a healer who took his work seriously. Show me what you have used, Sarah requested. Let me see your herbs, your methods. Perhaps together we can find the right combination. Over the next hour, the two women worked together, an unlikely partnership forged by desperate necessity. Adsila showed Sarah the native plants she had used: desert willow, Mormon tea, osha root. Sarah showed Adsila what she had brought: feverfew, elderflower, and her father's carefully preserved medicines. They began to find common ground, recognizing that many of their remedies targeted the same symptoms through different plants. Sarah suggested creating a rotation of treatments, alternating between different herb combinations every 2 hours to attack the illness from multiple angles. Adsila proposed adding certain Apache spiritual practices, songs, and prayers that she believed helped strengthen a child's spirit to fight. Ashki watched this collaboration with growing hope. He saw how Sarah's hands moved with practiced skill as she prepared medicines, how she explained her reasoning clearly, showing respect for Adsila's knowledge while offering her own. He saw how Adsila, despite her initial resistance, began to warm to the young white woman, recognizing a fellow healer's dedication and competence. As the sun reached its zenith, they began their intensive treatment of both boys. They created a steam tent using heated rocks and water, infused with eucalyptus and pine. They administered different herbal teas in careful rotation. They kept cool cloths on the boys' foreheads and made sure they drank small amounts of broth every hour. The village outside the wiki-up buzzed with tension and curiosity. Warriors gathered in groups, debating the wisdom of their chief's decision. Some supported him, arguing that a father's love for his son transcended politics. Others worried that allowing a white woman into their village would bring trouble, that soldiers might come searching for her, that it set a dangerous precedent. Nidus stood guard outside the wiki-up, his presence a clear warning that anyone who wished to challenge Ashki's decision would have to go through him first. Several warriors approached him throughout the day, voicing concerns. What if she is a spy? One warrior named Hanya demanded. What if she leads soldiers here? She is a healer trying to save sick children. Nidus responded firmly. If you cannot see the honor in that, then you have forgotten what it means to be Apache. We protect the innocent. We value courage. She has shown both. As afternoon turned to evening, Sarah never stopped working. She moved between the two boys constantly, checking their breathing, adjusting their blankets, administering medicines. Ashki brought her food and water, insisting she eat to maintain her strength. Their hands touched briefly as she accepted a cup of water, and for a moment their eyes met. In that moment, Ashki saw past the color of her skin, past the cultural divide, and recognized a kindred spirit. Here was someone who understood loss, who knew what it meant to fight for those you loved, who possessed both strength and compassion. Sarah saw in his dark eyes a reflection of her own pain, her own determination, and something else, a depth of character that commanded respect. "Thank you," she said softly, "for trusting me, for giving me a chance to save them. Thank you for caring about a child who is not your own," Ashki replied. Not many would show such dedication to an Apache boy. "A child is a child," Sarah said simply. "His mother trusted me with her most precious treasure. I will not betray that trust, and your son deserves every chance to live, to grow, to become the man his father is." The compliment, offered without flattery or manipulation, touched something deep in Ashki's heart. He realized with surprise that he had not felt this way since Lomasi's death. This connection to another person, this sense of being truly seen and understood. As night fell, both children showed slight improvement. Their fevers had not broken, but they had stabilized, no longer climbing to the dangerous heights of previous nights. Their breathing, while still labored, seemed marginally easier. It was not a cure, but it was hope. Adsila, exhausted from the day's efforts, finally allowed herself a small smile. "The white woman knows her craft," she admitted to Ashki. "She has a healer's hands and a healer's heart. Perhaps the spirits sent her to us." Throughout the night, Sarah and Adsila maintained their vigil, working in shifts so each could rest briefly. Ashki refused to leave, sitting near his son, watching Sarah work with growing admiration. She never complained, never showed impatience or frustration. When Matto whimpered in his fever dreams, she soothed him with gentle words. When Kaylee's breathing became difficult, she immediately adjusted his position and administered steam treatments. By dawn of the second day, both boys showed more significant improvement. The fevers had dropped noticeably. Kale opened his eyes and recognized his father for the first time in days, even managing a weak smile. Matto asked for water in a clear voice, no longer delirious. The relief that flooded through Ashki was overwhelming. He closed his eyes, offering a silent prayer of gratitude to the spirits. When he opened them, he found Sarah watching him, tears streaming down her face, tears of joy and exhaustion and relief. "They are going to live," she whispered. "Both of them are going to live." Ashki reached out and took her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just days ago. "Because of you. You saved them. You saved my son." News of the children's improvement spread through the village quickly. The atmosphere shifted from hostility to cautious acceptance. Over the following days, as Kayle and Matto continued to recover, growing stronger each day, the people began to see Sarah not as an enemy, but as the healer who had saved their chief's son. Women began approaching her with questions about treating their own children's minor ailments. Sarah always answered patiently, working with Adsila to find solutions that combined both their knowledge bases. The elderly healer became her staunch defender, praising Sarah's skills to anyone who would listen. Ashki found himself spending more and more time with Sarah, ostensibly to check on the children, but truthfully because he craved her company. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their lives, their losses, their hopes. Sarah told him about Boston, about her father's medical practice, about how she had met John Mitchell and agreed to marry him for a chance at a new life in the West, only to lose him so soon after arriving. "I did not love him," Sarah admitted one evening as they sat outside the wickiup, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Not the way a wife should love a husband, but he was kind, and he offered me adventure, escape from a life that felt suffocating. I thought perhaps love would grow with time. Now I will never know. Ashki understood that kind of honest arrangement. Among my people, marriages are sometimes made for practical reasons, alliances between families. But the best marriages are those where respect and affection grow into something deeper. Did you love your wife? Sarah asked carefully. Yes, Ashki said, his voice soft with memory. Lomasi was the other half of my soul. When she died, I thought I would never feel whole again. I thought my heart had died with her. But, Sarah prompted, sensing the unspoken word. Ashki turned to look at her, his dark eyes intense. But perhaps the heart is more resilient than we believe. Perhaps it can heal if given reason to. Sarah's breath caught. She understood what he was saying, felt the same pull, the same unexpected connection. Ashki, I am a white woman. Your people barely tolerate me. A relationship between us would be impossible. Many things seem impossible until someone has the courage to make them real, Ashki countered. You crossed into Apache territory alone to save a child. You faced a village of warriors who had every reason to hate you. You worked beside our healer despite the language barrier and cultural differences. You have already done the impossible, Sarah. Why stop now? Over the next 2 weeks, as Kale and Matto fully recovered, growing strong and healthy, Ashki and Sarah's relationship deepened. They fell in love gradually, naturally, like water finding its course through stone. It was not a love born of desperation or convenience, but one built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. The village watched this development with mixed reactions. Some, particularly the younger people and those who had witnessed Sarah's dedication firsthand, supported their chief's choice. Others remained skeptical, worried about the implications. But Ashki's authority was unquestioned, and when he announced his intention to take Sarah as his wife according to Apache custom, no one dared openly object. Adsila performed the ceremony one beautiful autumn evening. The entire village gathered, watching as Ashki and Sarah exchanged vows, their hands bound together with a sacred cord, symbolizing their commitment to walk through life as partners. Kale stood beside his father, healthy and smiling, clearly delighted to have Sarah joining their family. Matto, whom Sarah had formally adopted as her son, stood beside her, equally happy. As the celebration continued into the night, Ashki pulled Sarah aside, away from the crowds to a quiet spot overlooking the valley. The stars blazed overhead, countless and brilliant. Are you certain about this? Ashki asked, giving her one last chance to reconsider. Life here will not be easy. You will face prejudice from my people and especially from yours. White society will condemn you for this choice. Sarah smiled, reaching up to touch his face gently. I am certain. I found something here I never expected. A home, a family, a purpose, and a love I never thought possible. You saw past the color of my skin to the person inside. You trusted me when you had every reason not to. You gave me a chance to prove myself. How could I not love a man with that much courage and wisdom? Ashki pulled her close, holding her as if she were precious and fragile, though he knew she was anything but fragile. You saved my son's life. You brought light back into a heart I thought was forever dark. You are the bravest woman I have ever known, Sarah. I will spend the rest of my life proving myself worthy of you. You already have, Sarah whispered, then kissed him under the star-filled sky. In the years that followed, Sarah became an integral part of the Apache village. She worked alongside Adsila, teaching and learning, creating a unique healing practice that combined the best of both medical traditions. She raised Kale and Matto as brothers, both boys growing strong and healthy, becoming skilled hunters and respected members of the tribe. Her relationship with Ashki deepened into a partnership that was the foundation of both their lives. They faced challenges together, the ongoing conflicts with settlers and soldiers, the harsh realities of desert life, the occasional resistance from those who could not accept their union. But they faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each passing year. Ashki often reflected on that day when he had stumbled upon Sarah at the destroyed homestead, how close he had come to simply riding away, leaving her to her fate. The spirits had guided him there, he was certain, had brought them together for a purpose. She had saved his son, but in doing so, she had also saved him, bringing him back to life after years of merely existing. And Sarah, looking back on the terrifying day when an Apache chief had emerged from the rocks while she tended a dying child, marveled at how fear had transformed into trust, trust into respect, and respect into a love that transcended all the barriers the world tried to place between them. They proved that love could bridge any divide, that courage and compassion could overcome prejudice and fear, and that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most beautiful destinies. Their story became legend in the village, told around fires for generations, a reminder that the heart recognizes no boundaries and that true love, when given the chance, can flourish even in the most unlikely circumstances.